Some places don't announce themselves. They don't try to impress. They simply exist. And somehow, that's what makes them unbelievable. High above the clouds, mountains rise like pillars from another world. Water turns shades of blue that feel imagined, not natural. Cities grow upward, stacked layer upon layer, defying gravity itself. And in the silence of the far west, the land stretches so wide that time seems to slow down just to keep up. This is China, not the version built from headlines or postcards, but a land of extremes, where nature ignores the rules, history refuses to disappear, and the future arrives faster than memory. Here, ancient stone faces have watched centuries pass without speaking. Wooden towns still rest gently above flowing rivers, and just beyond them, cities rise so quickly they feel like they belong to tomorrow, not today. China is not one place. It is many worlds sharing the same ground. Some feel impossibly old. Others feel unreal. And some don't feel like Earth at all. In this journey, we won't rush. We won't chase facts or numbers. We will slow down and simply look. Because when you do, you begin to realize something quietly powerful. The most unbelievable places on Earth are not always hidden. Sometimes, they've been here all along. At first, it feels like a trick of the clouds, a moment where the fog plays with your eyes. But as the mist slowly drifts away, the truth becomes impossible to ignore. These mountains do not rise, they stand. Tall, narrow pillars of stone stretch upward, as if the earth itself reached for the sky and then froze in place. Separated by deep valleys and endless air, they feel less like mountains and more like islands suspended above the ground. Zhangjiajie is not loud. It doesn't demand attention, it waits. Clouds move gently between the stone columns, wrapping them, hiding them, revealing them again, as if the landscape is breathing. From a distance, everything feels unreal. Up close, it feels ancient, older than memory, older than stories. Wind brushes against bare rock faces that have been shaped not by human hands, but by time, rain, and patience. For millions of years, these pillars have stood here, unmoving, watching the world change beneath them. There's a strange calm in places like this, a silence that doesn't feel empty, but full of scale, full of perspective. Standing here, people feel small, not insignificant, just temporary. A reminder that the world existed long before us and will continue long after. Paths wind carefully through the landscape, never trying to control it, only to move alongside it. Even the structures built here feel hesitant, as if they know they are guests. When the clouds roll in thick, the mountains begin to disappear one by one, until only their peaks remain, floating, disconnected from the ground below. It's easy to understand why this place inspired fantasy. why it feels imagined, why it looks like something drawn from a dream. But this is not fiction. This is not another world. This is Earth, in one of its most unbelievable forms. Zhangjiajie reminds us that nature doesn't always need to be dramatic to feel powerful. Sometimes it only needs time and the freedom to shape itself. And as the fog settles once more, the mountains fade quietly back into the sky, leaving behind the single thought: if places like this still exist, what else have we forgotten to look for? After the stone and the clouds, the world changes again. Here, the mountains step back and water takes control. Zhangjiajie doesn't overwhelm with size, it draws you in with color. At first, the lakes seem calm, still, almost ordinary. But as light shifts, something strange begins to happen. Blues deepen, greens glow, gold and turquoise appear beneath the surface, layered like glass. The water is so clear that it feels invisible, as if the colors are floating in mid-air, untouched by depth or distance. Every step reveals a new shade, a new reflection, a new version of the same place. Waterfalls spill gently from lake to lake, never rushing, never forcing their way forward. They move as if they have nowhere else to be. There is a softness here, a quiet balance between motion and stillness. Trees lean toward the water, their reflections stretching downward, blurring the line between what is real and what is only an echo. In places like this, the mind slows down without being asked. There is nothing to solve, nothing to understand, only something to witness. Zhangjiajie feels carefully composed, as if every color was placed with intention. And yet, no human hand arranged this. It is nature, working patiently, layer by layer, over time we rarely think about. When clouds pass overhead, the lakes darken slightly, their colors shifting once more, never fixed, never repeating themselves the same way twice. This is not beauty meant to impress. It doesn't shout. It stays quiet, confident that if you're paying attention, you'll notice. Zhangjiajie reminds us that the unbelievable doesn't always come from extremes. Sometimes it comes from harmony, from water that refuses to choose one color, from landscapes that change with every breath of light. And as the sound of falling water fades behind us, one thing becomes clear. The world is capable of beauty far beyond what we expect, if we slow down long enough to see it. After water and color, the journey turns inward. Here, the landscape no longer moves, it watches. Carved into cliffs and rock faces, stone figures sit in silence, unchanged, unblinking, patient. They are not hidden deep underground. They are not placed on pedestals. They simply exist where the earth opens itself, as if the stone itself chose to remember. Faces emerge from the rock, softened by centuries of wind and rain. Some are calm, some are stern, some seem almost aware of the time passing before them. These figures have watched dynasties rise and disappear. They have seen roads form, fade, and form again. They have remained while everything else moved on. Standing here, time feels different. Moments stretch longer. Silence feels heavier, and the sound of footsteps echoes, as if the stone is listening. Each carving was shaped slowly, patiently, by hands that are long gone, hands that worked without knowing how many centuries would follow. There is no urgency here, no attempt to impress, only presence. The stone remembers what people forget. It remembers belief. It remembers devotion. It remembers the idea that some things are worth creating, even if the creator will never see the end. As light moves across the carved faces, shadows deepen in their eyes. Expressions shift subtly, not because they change, but because we do. These figures do not tell stories loudly. They do not explain themselves. They simply remain. And in doing so, they ask a quiet question. What will still be here long after we are gone? In places like this, the unbelievable is not found in scale or color. It is found in endurance, in the idea that something made by humans can last long enough to outlive the hands that shaped it. As we step away from the stone, their gaze stays fixed, not following us, not needing to. They have already seen enough. After stone and silence, life returns, gently. Fenghuang does not rush to be seen. It reveals itself slowly, one reflection at a time. Wooden houses rest on stilts above the river, their foundations touching water instead of land. They lean slightly, not from weakness, but from age. Here, the river is not a border, it is a companion. It carries quiet reflections of lanterns, balconies, and passing footsteps. Everything moves, but nothing feels hurried. In the early morning, mist drifts low across the water, softening the edges of the town. For a moment, it's hard to tell where the buildings end and their reflections begin. Fenghuang feels lived in, not preserved behind glass, not frozen in time, but gently continuing. Doors open, boats glide past, voices echo softly between wooden beams. This is not history remembered, it is history still happening. The structures here were not built to last forever. They were built to serve daily life, to shelter, to connect, to coexist with the river below. And somehow, that makes them stronger. At night, warm lights spill onto the water, turning the river into a second sky. The town seems to double, as if existing in two worlds at once. There is a quiet wisdom in places like this, a reminder that progress does not always mean replacing the old. Sometimes it means living alongside it. Fenghuang does not compete with the future. It doesn't try to resist it either. It simply remains, balanced between water and wood, between memory and motion. And as the river continues its steady path forward, the town moves with it, unchanged in spirit, even as time flows on. After wood and water, the world changes again. The river widens, the horizon sharpens, and the silence gives way to a steady hum. Shanghai does not arrive slowly. It appears all at once. A skyline rises from the edge of the water, dense and vertical, layered with glass, steel, and light. Buildings stand so close together they seem to lean into one another, as if sharing the weight of their ambition. This is a city built in motion. A place that learned how to grow upward because there was nowhere left to go out. By day, Shanghai feels vast. By night, it feels endless. Lights stretch along the river, reflecting in long, broken lines across the surface. The city doubles itself, once in the sky, once in the water below. Here, time moves differently. Decades feel compressed, generations blur together. What once took centuries elsewhere happened here in moments. And yet, beneath the height and speed, there is restraint. The city does not shout, it glows. From above, the movement looks almost gentle. Cars flowing like veins of light, bridges connecting distant edges, the river quietly holding it all together. Shanghai is often described as modern, but that word feels incomplete. This is not just modernity, this is momentum. A city constantly becoming something else, never fully finished, never fully still. And standing among its towers, one thought becomes unavoidable. If this can exist, if a place can transform so completely, so quickly, then the limits we imagine are not as fixed as we believe. Shanghai is unbelievable not because it is futuristic, but because it feels like a glimpse of what happens when human ambition refuses to slow down. As the city lights fade into the night haze, the river continues its quiet path forward. unchanged, unbothered. A reminder that even here, in a city racing toward tomorrow, some things remain steady. After the glow of Shanghai, the rhythm shifts. Beijing does not rush forward, it layers itself. Here, time doesn't replace what came before, it stacks on top of it. Wide avenues stretch outward, but just beyond them, narrow streets still wind quietly between low walls and courtyards. Morning light spills across tiled roofs that have faced the same sun for generations. At the heart of the city, stone and symmetry remain untouched by noise. Gates open slowly, courtyards breathe, walls hold their ground. These spaces were not designed for speed. They were designed for order, for balance, for permanence. And yet, just beyond them, glass towers rise, screens glow, and the city moves at a different pace. In Beijing, the past is never far away. It doesn't hide, it waits. You can feel it in the way streets change texture, in the sudden quiet that appears between buildings, in the contrast between shadowed alleys and open modern skylines. This city has learned how to carry its history without letting it become a weight. It adapts, it adjusts, but it does not forget. Beijing feels deliberate, measured, aware of where it has been. Standing here, you sense that progress does not always mean leaving something behind. Sometimes it means walking forward while keeping one foot firmly planted in memory. The unbelievable part of Beijing is not how much it has changed, but how much it has chosen to keep. As evening settles in, lights begin to glow softly against old stone, and the city becomes quieter, more reflective. A place where centuries coexist without competing, where the future moves forward without erasing the past. Then the ground begins to disappear. In Chongqing, the city does not spread outward, it climbs. Rivers carve deep paths through the land, and instead of resisting them, the city rises around them, layer upon layer, road above road, bridge above bridge. From a distance, it feels impossible. Buildings stack vertically along cliffs, highways curve through the air, trains pass directly through living spaces, as if gravity itself was only a suggestion. Fog rolls in from the rivers below, softening the edges of everything it touches. At times, the city feels unfinished, not because it is incomplete, but because it is constantly reshaping itself. Here, perspective is never stable. What feels like ground level might be 10 stories above the water. A street becomes a rooftop. A bridge becomes a horizon. Chongqing forces the eye to adjust, to relearn how space works. At night, the city transforms. Lights spill downward instead of outward, cascading along buildings and hillsides. The darkness between layers deepens, and the city begins to feel endless. Despite the scale, life continues with quiet familiarity. People move through this vertical world as if it were ordinary, crossing bridges, descending stairways that seem to fall forever, living between levels that never truly meet. Chongqing is unbelievable, not because it is futuristic, but because it adapts. It bends itself to the land instead of flattening it. This is a city shaped by necessity, by geography, by the refusal to give up space simply because it is difficult. And standing above the rivers, watching the fog swallow entire neighborhoods below, one thought becomes clear. Human ingenuity does not always simplify the world. Sometimes, it makes it more complex and more extraordinary. As the lights fade into the mist, Chongqing remains suspended between earth and sky, a reminder that even cities can learn to climb. After the height and the noise, the world opens. Here, there are no towers, no crowded streets, no rush to become something else. The land stretches outward, wide and uninterrupted, until the horizon feels impossibly far away. In Western China, silence is not empty. It is expansive. Mountains rise slowly from open plains, their edges softened by distance and light. The air feels thinner, cleaner, as if sound itself has learned to travel carefully. Movement is minimal here. A distant road, a single structure standing alone, a figure crossing the land at an unhurried pace. Everything feels deliberate. This is a place that does not ask to be understood. It simply exists on its own terms. After everything that came before, the floating mountains, the unreal water, the stone that remembers, the cities that climb and glow, This quiet feels heavier than noise ever could. Here, scale takes on a new meaning. Not the scale of height or speed, but of space, of time, of patience. The land does not compete with the sky, it meets it. And in that meeting, something shifts. You begin to notice how small movement becomes, how thoughts slow, how the need to explain fades away. This is where the journey settles. Not with spectacle, but with stillness. China reveals itself here not as a single place, but as a collection of worlds, each one unbelievable in its own way. From landscapes that feel imagined, to histories carved in stone, to cities that defy logic, to silence that stretches farther than sight. The unbelievable is not one moment, it is contrast. It is the space between noise and quiet, between ancient and new, between movement and rest. And perhaps that is the most remarkable thing of all, that places like these can exist side by side, sharing the same ground, the same sky. As the land fades slowly into the distance, one final thought remains. The world has not run out of wonders. We have simply learned to move past them too quickly. And sometimes, all it takes to see them again is the willingness to slow down. If this place made you pause for a moment, share what stayed with you in the comments. And if you'd like to keep exploring stories like this, subscribe and continue the journey with us.